Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diana and the Book Hunt. In today's video, I'm going to be doing part 2 of my February reads, where I'm going to talk about all of the books that I finished from the 15th, I believe, until the end of the month. I already did part 1 where I discussed the first portion of the month, all the reads that I had in that period of time, so I'm going to link it up in the cards if you haven't seen it yet, if you want to check it out. And now I'm going to focus on all the reads that I had in the last couple of weeks. So in total, if I'm not mistaken, I actually had 26 books that I finished this month, which was crazy because it's a short month and I was just on a roll. I had a lot of ups and downs. It was kind of a turbulent month because I had a lot of 2-star reads and 3-star reads, but I also had a couple of 5-star reads, so I'm really happy with the turnout of those. And I'm going to discuss a couple of those in a couple of moments because they were actually favorites of mine and I think they'll end up in my top reads of the year, so I can't wait to share those with you. And I'm just going to start in the order of the books that I read, first to last. And the first one is actually one that has been on my TBR for such a long time. The book is called Transcendence by Shay Savage, and this book involves time traveling, where the heroine is time traveling from modern times to, like, I don't know what kind of times those are called, but like she is meeting this caveman type of guy. And this story was interesting because obviously you have the type of situation where someone from modern times needs to get accustomed to living in conditions which are like the bare minimum. They live in a cave and they have dangers like wild animals attacking them, and people from like other, let's say, tribes attacking them, and all kinds of things that you wouldn't encounter in like a normal setting. So that was kind of exciting, but at the same time there was one thing that typically works for me, but in this story it didn't. There was a language barrier. So the guy who is in the story in the prehistoric times, his name is Ed. We hear his thoughts. By the way, I failed to say that we're viewing the story through his perspective. And the thing is we see everything through his perspective, but because we don't get the heroine's perspective, it's very difficult for us to get her point of view and how she's thinking through the modern things that she is kind of trying to apply into the story, because she does help him out with making appliances, for example, that she knows how to make from modern times and apply them to, you know, the prehistoric times. But because we don't really get her point of view, that part of the communication and thought process is lost on the story. And at the same time, it really takes a long time for the two of them to get into communicating properly. I actually, within the story, I don't find that they communicate properly at all. They don't find the common language at all. I don't know if this is a spoiler alert, so I'm sorry if I spoiled it for you here, but yeah, just the story really didn't work for me in that respect. Typically, I really like language barriers because it creates a sense of like sometimes a bit of comic relief, or sometimes like cute moments where they try to figure out how to communicate something with each other. But within this story, it just didn't work for me because at points it really just got frustrating. So I gave this book 3 stars. It wasn't a bad story. I do have to say that there were definitely some interesting moments within it that kept me wanting to continue and to finish the story, but at the same time I really expected more of it, so I gave it 3 stars. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the next book because I really didn't like it. The book is called Truth by Trillina Pucci. I actually have been seeing Trillina Pucci blowing up on Instagram with her holiday story that she posted, and I know that she has a lot of mafia romances that she does. And I've always wanted to try this author out, but yeah, this book just didn't work for me. I had it on audio in Storytel, so I thought like, okay, let's try this out to see if this author is going to be for me. But I just didn't like it. It really started off well because we have a heroine who is kind of badass. She has a good position at a company that she works at, and she starts up a relationship with a guy, but it turns into an emotionally abusive relationship. So she's kind of trying to get out of that and get back to being her badass self. And on this kind of trip that she does with people that she doesn't like, actually, she meets this guy at this kind of almost like a sex club or like fantasy club, I don't know how to call it, and they immediately feel an attraction to each other, fall in love, and go about trying to make things work. And insta love is not my thing. And while the story started off well with her, with us getting to know her badass character, it just went downhill from there, and I just didn't appreciate the character arc that her character took. So yeah, I just didn't like the story. I gave it 2 stars. I don't know if I'm going to read anything else by this author. I may give her a second chance at some point, but at this time, this book just didn't convince me to continue with her work. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Now I'm going to talk about the book that everyone has been raving about on BookTube, Bookstagram, I believe also TikTok, even though I'm not on TikTok. So this book really filled my heart with so much joy. This is the type of book that really is like the example of why romances are such wonderful stories. And this is the type of book that I would recommend to anyone who wants to try the genre out, because it's simply perfect. The book is by Liz Tomforde. It's the second book within her Windy City series, and it's called The Right Move. The first one was Mile High. I already gave that one 5 stars. It was a favorite of mine of the month of January. And this one was no different. It actually exceeded my expectations even, because it was just so perfectly done. We have the brother of the heroine of the first book. The first book was centered on Stevie. The second book is centered on her brother Ryan, who is a basketball player, and he's really at the level in basketball similar to LeBron James, Michael Jordan, really like GOAT type of level. And then we have Stevie's best friend Indy, who has come into a situation already in the first book. We found out that her long-term partner was cheating on her, so she was in a very bad situation and she has been looking for a place to stay. And Stevie really begs Ryan for him to give her a place to stay in his apartment, because she was living with him, but now she moved with her boyfriend. And he's like at the start like, no, I'm not gonna do it. I really value my space and my privacy, and I don't want to have anyone in my space. But she kind of wears him down, and he agrees to have Indy spend some time until she finds another option into his apartment. And they're really such opposites. He's like the quiet giant, and she's like this bubbly, sunshiny personality. He likes his order, his calm, and she loves to blast music and have chaos all around her. All her clothes are strewn about everywhere in the room. You can't even open the door to her room. So they're really extreme opposites, and at the beginning they have this amazing kind of clash together, but at the same time both of them appreciate each other's good qualities. Especially Indy already from the start is like, okay, there's no way I can deny that he's hot. So she's also giving amazing updates to Stevie the whole time about how attracted she is to Stevie's brother, and that just creates such comic relief within the book. I love it. And the whole progress of their relationship is just so amazing. Ryan is such an amazing swoony type of hero who shows his love instead of saying or talking about it, which is the best type of quality that you can have, because words don't mean nothing if you don't back them up with actions, and Ryan really gets the point to that. So I love that about him. And there is also a fake dating plot within this story, which makes for even more interesting situations within the book. All in all, like I mentioned, this story is absolute perfection. I would recommend this to anyone, even if you don't like the romance genre. I don't believe that anyone can say anything bad about this book, because it's just so good. And yeah, it's going to end up in my top reads of 2023, that is for sure. Next up, I picked up a book because I was craving to read something that is more fantastical. I found the book on Storytel by Kingfisher. The book is called Bryony and Roses, and I found out that it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I started to listen to it, and I immediately felt a very whimsical, very beautiful type of way that the story is depicted. I was immediately captivated by it. And even though usually retellings, they really need to be done very well for me to enjoy them, because if it seems like I'm reading the same story over and over again, I will not appreciate it. But this story really made me appreciate the retelling so much, because I did find myself recognizing where the author took her inspiration from the original story, but at the same time she did so many things differently that it really made me appreciate her approach, and especially the type of humor that she uses and the banter that she uses between the Beauty and the Beast in this situation was just off the charts. I really love this story. I gave it 4 stars, and I definitely recommend it if you enjoy reading retellings. The next book was one that I actually had wanted to include in a video that I did a couple of days ago, which involves recommendations with dancers or dancing. This book is called Dancer by Jamie Schlosser. I actually had read another book by this author a couple of weeks ago and I really liked it, so I really had high hopes for it. But this one fell a bit flat for me. I really had high hopes because I knew that this is like childhood friends to lover situation where there is a very big gap in time where they hadn't seen each other, and it involves a woman who is a dancer. So I really had high hopes for this one, but for some reason I think that the connection between the 2 characters, even though we do see some backstory of them of when they were kids, and they had a very amazing connection because I think her grandma was like a person who was a connection for both of them because they both loved her a lot. Those types of details typically really make me want to swoon more, but within this story I just didn't feel the connection as much as I should have. I really don't have a tangible kind of factor to say what didn't work for me, but I just didn't feel it. So I gave this book 3 stars, and that's why I also didn't include it in that video. Next up, we have unfortunately another 2-star read. I have to say that with this one, I fell in love with the cover. Again, the trap where I love the cover and I don't love the book. The book is called Fake It Till You Bake It by Jamie Wesley, and it involves an NFL player who has a side gig. He opened up a bakery with cupcakes because he has a passion for it, and he actually has this business with a couple of other guys from the NFL team. It's kind of an investment for them, and he's very proud of his bakery. And then one day in comes the heroine who disses his product and his bakery, so he's like very offended by it. He finds out that she has been part of this reality like the Bachelorette kind of, or no, the Bachelor kind of show where she was one of the last contendants and she was supposed to get married to the guy, but she declined. So she has a very big following and there's a lot of drama going about her character. But because she has such a mass following, they decide to fake date because she's going to be able to get him the publicity he needs for his starting up business, and then she is going to get his persona because he's also famous to help him remedy the situation that happened in the reality show. And it was messy. I just didn't like it, and I felt like the heroine was such a, I don't want to say the expletive because I don't calling women that, but she was such a horrible person to the hero. She was really being very arrogant and very offensive toward him. So I don't really appreciate that. I can appreciate when a woman wants to stand her ground and like give pushback to a male hero who is being kind of also aggressive or offensive to her. But in this story, she just did it for no apparent reason, and I really didn't like that. So I gave this book 2 stars. Next up is another 5-star read. Possibly, no, not possibly, definitely a book that will end up in my top reads of this year. The book is called Finding Jean Kelly by Torie Jean. This book was kindly recommended by Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life. I had seen this book going around in a couple of her videos, and she recommended it because she herself has experience with endometriosis, which is the chronic illness that the heroine in the book has. And what she mentioned is that she found herself really connecting to the book, and that the representation within the book is very accurate and very much felt like she was represented very well within that book. So this is the type of story that I definitely always want to try out. Whenever someone really vouches for the representation within a book, I definitely want to try it out. So I got it off of Kindle and I read it and I absolutely loved it. I mean, the thing is, the heroine herself, she's dealing on a daily basis with the aftermath of this very difficult chronic illness where there is no cure for her. No one can really help her out with alleviating the pain that she feels on a daily basis, and that really sucks, because every type of hopes and dreams and like aspirations that you may have, whenever physically you're not able to act on those, you kind of get demotivated day by day. You kind of feel like there's no point in you chasing those dreams because you're kind of let down by your body. And I really felt connected to that. I love that about the story. And then the thing that I love the most is obviously the hero, who is the type of hero that all women need, the type of hero who is the support system, the rock, the absolute best motivator, the cheerleader of anyone who is dealing with such a situation. Liam, who is the hero, and I don't know that I mentioned that the woman's name, I think, is Evie. I just love both of them. They're actually childhood friends who became enemies because of a situation that happened in their teen years, and then there's a lot of banter between them when they meet up again when they're adults, because Evie definitely hasn't gotten over what happened when they were teens, and he just wants to redeem himself. And he's such a pining hero. I love a pining hero. I love a hero who will do anything for the heroine. I love a hero who will go through fire for their woman. And I just loved how he's so understanding with her, how he's so patient with her, how he has so much love for her. This was such a swoony story, and I definitely recommend it for anyone who would like to pick up a story where there is great representation, but also a very big flair of people who love classic movies, and I definitely love those. So all of the little references to those movies were just the cherry on top for me within this story. So I highly recommend this one. The next story is one that I picked up because I love sports romances. If you haven't noticed, I've been talking about sports romances in almost every single video that I've done. But this one focuses on a baseball player, and those are stories that I haven't read too many of, so I definitely want to read more. The book is called Swing for the Fences by Kimberly Readnour. And this story focuses on a guy and a girl in college who they really had an amazing connection together, and she really felt like he could be the one for her. But then she witnesses something that looks like he's cheating on her, so they get separated. And she immediately starts dating someone else, and it's a long-term relationship, but unfortunately that guy also cheats on her. So she feels like she's the type of woman that gets cheated on a lot, so the problem may be with her. And then they get a second chance where they reconnect, and he wants to prove to her that he is the man for her and that he would never cheat on her, and that what happened in the past was a miscommunication. So typically, I love second chance romances, so this story should work in theory, but in practice, it was not what I had hoped it would be. The whole cheating thing, where there's once, twice, three times cheating, and she's like, "What is going on?" and how the characters' miscommunication, or at least how the author threw in the miscommunication within the plots, really didn't work for me all too well. So I gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't a bad book per se, but there were just some factors within the book that weren't favorites of mine. I'm sorry to say that there's another 2-star read in this list. The book is called Adios Pantalones by J. Sterling. I actually read 2 books by J. Sterling in January, and I really loved them. So I was like, I want to read more by this author, but this one really unfortunately didn't work well for me. The book is centering on a guy who is part owner of a bar, and he owns the bar with his brothers, and he's the type of guy who is like, everyone hits on him because he's gorgeous and he has this job where it's almost a requirement to flirt with ladies, but at the same time he's the type of guy who actually wants to settle down and find the love of his life. So he's kind of in a situation where there's a paradox around him, where he is presented as a playboy, but he actually wants to be a one-woman type of guy. And then we have the heroine, who actually is a single mom, and she goes into the bar once. She does get attracted to him, but at the same time she sees this playboy persona and she's like, yeah, that's not for me. So she has this amazing misconception about him throughout almost the whole story. She has prejudices and assumptions about him that I absolutely dislike typically, because I'm like, just get to know him a little and then make up your mind, you know? And I was like cringing the whole time on behalf of him, because he was the whole time kind of trying to prove himself while she didn't really know him. And I'm like, why do you need to prove yourself to someone who doesn't even want to get to know you? I'm like, that's not the type of person you should be with. So I was kind of rooting for the hero and against the heroine the whole time, and that's something that is a recipe for disaster in my opinion. So yeah, I gave this one 2 stars. Fortunately enough, there were 2 stories that I really did love at the end of the month. The first one is called Room for Rent by Shay Stahl. This one I gave 4 stars, and it's revolving around a woman who is, she used to be married. She's the mom of 3, but her husband gets a heart attack, so he passes away. And at the same moment, she starts to find out that he had been cheating on her and he had actually bankrupted them, essentially. So she's in a very tough spot where she has been lied to, cheated on, and she has 3 kids to take care of in the aftermath of his death. And then she goes into this coffee shop. She has nothing left to her credit card, and she orders this order and finds out she cannot pay for it. So the guy next to her kind of offers to pay for her, and when she turns around and sees him, he's this gorgeous college guy, and there is essentially an age gap between them because she's in her late 20s and he's at the start of his 20s, so there's definitely a reverse age gap here. And he is like a promise within the baseball world. He's already signed after college to start playing for a team, and at the beginning she's like, yeah, that's not gonna work out because he's too young, in a different stage of his life. I'm a mom of 3, so how is that gonna work out? But at the same time, they have an amazing connection together, and he really wears her down. He is kind of fixated on getting together with her, and I love how tenacious he is within the story. So yeah, this one I really enjoyed, and there were so many comical situations also with the kids involved that, yeah, it just left me feeling like I was really enjoying the story. So this one definitely deserved, in my opinion, at least 4 stars. I don't think that it would work for everyone because definitely it's more of a light-hearted type of read, but yeah, I left feeling like good about it when I finished it. So yeah, in my opinion, it's a 4-star read. And then the last book that I read is one that was highly recommended by Bree from 11 Words, one of my favorite booktubers. The book is called Not My Type by Evie Mitchell, and the cover is gorgeous, y'all. So I was like, okay, it has a gorgeous cover. It comes highly recommended by a favorite booktuber of mine, so I'm definitely going to be picking this up. And fortunately, I just found out that Evie Mitchell's 2 books are actually uploaded onto Storytel, so I immediately started on the first one. This book centers on our heroine, who is actually a sexologist. She is a wheelchair user and she has a podcast which is very successful. It deals with topics where the listeners, that like the target group for her podcast are people who need advice in how to accessibly enjoy sexual relations. So one of her listeners had requested a podcast episode to be about role play. So she decided that she wanted to explore that. So she went about asking about it and found out that one of her classmates from way back when actually is someone who deals with rope play in like a gym where he is living in the same town as her. So she goes about to meet him and to take one of his classes, and that's how the hero and heroine meet. I found that this story was amazing because it has amazing representation. It also has amazing chemistry between the hero and heroine, and it deals with topics that are very much ones that need to be discussed and ones that need to be made accessible for everyone. And especially I liked that the topics of the podcast were like bringing into attention topics that I wanted to research for myself. So that is something that, even though it's a romance and even though it's a story that makes me feel good about reading about a romance between two characters, it also piqued my interest into researching other topics, which I absolutely loved. Even though this is a short story, it didn't feel rushed to me. It didn't feel like it wasn't complete, in my opinion. So I really loved it. I gave this one 5 stars and I definitely recommend it. This wraps up all of the reads that I had for this month. Please check out the other video that I did on the first portion of the month, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Please let me know what your favorite reads of February were, and let me know if you've read any of the stories that I mentioned and whether you loved them or didn't love them. And I hope to see you very soon in the next one. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Take care and bye-bye.